AJ Smith-Shawver is currently on the injured list, now the 60-day. Let's break down that, yesterday's doubleheader, what to expect this weekend, and more on a special live edition of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on into a special live edition of Braves Today here on Friday, May 30th. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. There are a million things to get to in today's show. I have probably 6 or 7 different bullet points over here I want to talk about. Whether it's AJ Smith-Shawver, Chris Sale hitting, like literally setting an MLB record, the moves, the roster moves today, who is Jose Azocar, expectations versus Boston this week, all of that. I also want to get your questions. So those of you who are here live on YouTube, this is a thing we're going to start doing every Friday. Drop your comments down below. Hop in the live chat. I'm going to do my best to watch that while we're talking. We're going to make this a conversation best we can. Audio people, I'll do my best to make sure I read all these comments out loud so that you don't miss anything as well. Before we get into the doubleheader, I want to talk about AJ Smith-Shawver. This sucks. Like, it's completely honest. This sucks. He leaves yesterday's game with what they initially called, I believe they called it a right elbow strain. Put him on the injured list between games. And from what I know for the Atlanta Braves, the way that they handle these type of injury things, the elbow strain is the designation that this organization normally uses when they suspect there is UCL damage, but they have not yet confirmed it via an MRI, right? So what Atlanta's going to do here, we're going to get to how it happened and everything. But what we're going to do here is the way that the Braves handle this, okay? AJ was getting an MRI this morning. Atlanta will typically tell us, as in us, I mean the media, will tell us that he is being sent for further evaluation or for a second opinion, and they'll send him to Dr. Keith Meister in Dallas. That's who Atlanta uses to do all of their Tommy Johns. I have an industry database that I look at that tracks Tommy John surgery across the league. And I don't think they've used anybody else for one since like 2017 or 18. Like, they used Dr. Keith Meister for all of them. And typically what'll happen, and this happened with Strider in the same pattern, they will tell us he's going to be sent in the coming days to be evaluated by Dr. Meister. And then when he's evaluated by Dr. Meister, he will go ahead and have the surgery. And the Braves will announce after the fact that that the evaluation showed that blank player had a partial or complete tear with his UCL, and they will anyway, and it was repaired by Dr. Meister, and he is expected to be out for however long, right? Like, they don't ever confirm it's a torn UCL until they've already done the surgery. And I think part of that is just there could be other damage, and you don't really know until you get in there. Like, the UCL is such a small little joint or a small little ligament. You don't really know until you get in there how bad the tear is, where it's located, all of that. So that's what I'm expecting to happen. The fact that they put him on the 60-day IL today tells me that is probably the most likely outcome. We don't know for a fact, obviously, but that is probably what it is. And how it happened yesterday is a little bit frustrating. I wrote about this over on Braves Today. This morning's newsletter, the deep dive we do every weekday morning, is about what's going to happen to AJ Smith-Shawver and the lineup because of that. So what we know is he touched 99. He averaged 97.1 yesterday. And it's the third consecutive start where he's set a new career high for average fastball velocity. and he gets hit on the heel by the liner from Alec Bohm. And then on the very next batter, it's Trey Turner. He throws 2 fastballs, and they're like 94.7, 94.2. Spencer Strider in the dugout immediately knew something was wrong. He goes over, he says something to Rick Kranitz. Rick Kranitz says something to Brian Snitker, and they go out and take him out of the game. And Smith-Shawver said like he felt something pop. We saw him mouth it on the broadcast. They confirmed that in the post-game media availability. Snit said, yeah, he said, I felt something pop. So we're all expecting it to be the worst case scenario. Quick grabbing a question here in the chat. Joe Me asks, is it against MLB rules for pitchers to use stem cells? I feel like that's the next breakthrough to keep guys healthy. I'm honestly not sure. I know that platelet-rich therapy is something that they use. You'll see something where guys who have a UCL strain, it's not completely torn, but like it's partially torn. They will sometimes choose to do rest and platelet-rich therapy to try and rehab it. And when I kind of casually ran through that database last night, most situations where a guy does that PRP therapy, they end up getting the surgery anyway. It just delays the inevitable. And the time frame you're in right now for AJ, it is 15 to 18 months for a traditional Tommy John repair, which would put him, if he had the surgery next week, let's just give a random date, that would put him probably not back until 2027. Everybody says the internal brace can have you come back in 12 months or so. There's a little bit of a different situation there. That's not universal. Typically, if you have only a partial tear of the UCL and you're getting the internal brace, 12 months is kind of the front end. But in my experience, a lot of what I've seen has been like, and looking in this database, because it breaks down everything by, was there a total or partial tear, internal brace, no internal brace, first procedure, second procedure, whatever. Even like a full tear with the internal brace is still 14 months or so. So rehabbing, if this happened in spring training, maybe trying the PRP therapy and rehabbing a partial tear could work out, because it wouldn't really change your time frame that much if you're looking at 14 to 16 months anyway. But if you wait to rehab it now and then have the surgery later, you end up running into the 2027 season where you miss more time. This is the same thing that happened to Andrew Painter, I think last year or 2 years ago, where he tore it in spring. They tried to rehab it. He had the surgery in like July and he missed more time than he would have. So, bit of a thing there. From a logistical standpoint, real quick, because I saw somebody ask about this. Bryce Elder's eligible to be called up on Saturday. He was optioned down the 16th. He cannot be an injury replacement call-up because the injury replacement call-up was Nathan Peterson, who was on the taxi squad. But Elder's eligible to be called back up on Saturday. They'll probably wait until his actual start day next week. I think it's supposed to be either Tuesday or Wednesday, looking at the rotation lineup here. So we'll kind of go from that. And the question I have now is, going down the stretch, what happens with your rotation? Because I think the issue here, like you have Sale, Holmes, Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider, Bryce Elder. It's not a bad 1 through 5. Bryce Elder is a perfectly acceptable number 5, whether we like him or not. But after that, it's really shallow. You've got Davis Daniel, who hasn't really put it together at the major league level. Hurston Waldrop, who has improved significantly with his mechanical changes in AAA, but he's also a little bit kind of behind the 8 ball there, right? And then Ian Anderson, who has not looked like a major league caliber starter even after re-signing with Atlanta. He still is having the walk issues and things like that. Part of me wondered if when Ronaldo Lopez came back, if Atlanta would put him in the bullpen. And if they can get some of those guys I just named to step up, or maybe some of the prospects like a Blake Burkhalter or something, they might still be able to do that. But it feels like your rotation depth is shallow enough where they may need to try and work and get Ronaldo Lopez back as a starter, depending on when he can come back from the shoulder surgery. Um, Quick shout out to some people here in the comments. Hey, Georgia fan. Hey, Emmanuel. I'm glad you're watching this from during your lunch break. I do think one of the impacts that we're not maybe thinking about if AJ Smith-Shawver is out all of next season with Tommy John is I wondered if Renato Lopez would be the closer next year. I think it's pretty clear to all of us at this point. Raisel Iglesias is probably not going to be re-signed, right? He's struggled a lot with this. And my expectation next year was Sale, Strider, Swellenbach, and Holmes, barring injury, are locked in as your 1 through 4. And your 5th spot, assuming you don't sign anybody, and this is a great offseason to make a big signing because you're resetting the CBT. So if you sign a qualifying offer pitcher, which there's a lot of really good options, Dylan Cease, Michael King, Zach Gallen, a lot of options there. Your 5th starter candidates were like Bryce Elder, Hurston Waldrop, Ian Anderson, Davis Daniel. You can probably find one guy out of that group of 4, plus the prospects, right? And so I thought Lopez may be the closer next year. But with AJ Smith-Shawver not an option for the rotation next year, now you're in a situation where if you then put Lopez in the pen, yes, you can find a 5th starter out of that group. But think about it. Every single year, we lose somebody to the 60-day IL. Like every single season. And in that newsletter, I actually went in there and made a list, right? Like if you think about every single year, somebody goes on the 60-day IL. Whether it was, Tuki Toussaint did it, and I think 21, Kyle Wright, Max Fried, Spencer Strider last year, everybody, like every year, some starting pitcher of yours in the first month of the season goes down for most of the season. So they may have to use Lopez as a starter. They just may not have an option next year as much as we want him to be the closer or think that he could thrive in that closing role, throwing 100 miles an hour. He's experienced with it. His contract is still cheap enough where he could do it, right? Jeff in the comments here, I still see Waldrop as a reliever too. I did up until these mechanical changes. He's really kind of calmed down. He's calmed his leg lift, his stride and everything. And because of it, he's really gotten a lot better about getting pitches in the strike zone. He's able to set things up with his fastball and then work the splitter and the slider off of that. Some of his struggles were they could just ignore the fastball because he couldn't land it for a strike, and he had to bring everything else into the zone. I do think that the door is now still open for him to be a starter, but Waldrop could always be a fallback as a back-end reliever and a closer as well. So there is that. Hey, Matt, I see you in the comments there. Glad you're here. Thanks for the support of the show. You're on here all the time. All right. In just a second, let's talk about the roster moves that they made today. Made a couple call-ups, added a guy on a free agent signing, right? We'll do all that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to a special live edition of Braves Today. And quick question in there from Joe. Does de-emphasizing Waldrop's splitter kind of help everything? He's throwing a lot more sliders. This is the developmental point the Braves like to do. They specifically do try to get guys to focus on improving their slider quality, right? And so one of the things they'll do is they'll shelve some of the other secondaries. And they'll have them throw a lot more sliders than they typically do. It's a common developmental thing. They did it with AJ Smith-Shawver. They did it with Spencer Schwellenbach. A lot of these guys, they say, hey, we're going to focus on one breaking ball. And this is something where we know Waldrop's splitter is fantastic, right? So you can go ahead and have him focus on being able to use the slider in every possible situation, getting comfortable with it so that so that when you bring the splitter back in, he's more of a consistent performer. We saw this with AJ Smith-Shawver last year in spring. He used the changeup a ton. And in situations where you would not use the changeup, right? But they were trying to get him comfortable with the changeup. He had just changed to the split finger. They wanted to get him comfortable with it in all the situations. And we saw this year how good that split finger changeup has been. So that's kind of the thing that they do. I'm assuming that's what they're doing with Waldrop, is they're having him throw a lot more sliders to get comfortable with it so that he has a consistent and reliable 3-pitch mix, and then he can mix in the curveball and things like that as he needs to. They just had to wait for him to get the control dialed in first before they could do that. A lot of other times they do that from the jump. With him, they had to get the control figured out first, and then they started doing that. Okay, talking about the roster moves they made today. Mike Smith has a great comment in here. I hate to say this, but Dodd looked good yesterday. Dylan Dodd was called back up this morning. I had the roster moves pulled up on my computer, and obviously now I can't find it, which is exactly how things go for me, I feel like, all the time. Okay, so they called Dylan Dodd up. They selected Jose Azocar to the roster. I'll get to that in a second. To make room for all of this, Fairchild on the 10-day IL with a dislocated pinky. Michael Peterson was optioned to AAA Gwinnett. And then to make the 40-man roster spot for Azocar, they put Smith-Shawver on the 60-day IL. So AJ's done for the year. I mean, even if this was something where he could come back at the end of the 60 days, they'd have to build him back up. AJ's essentially done for the year. We don't know for a fact, but we think he is. On Dodd real quick, the big thing for Dylan Dodd that I think a lot of us are not maybe realizing, because we've seen him be bad in the majors as a starter recently, is he's added a cutter, and it's one of those, the cutter's a bridge pitch, and it can kind of unlock everything that you do. And the cutter has been able to do that for Dylan Dodd. It gives him something in the middle between his normal fastball, between his slider, from a movement perspective. And actually, so far in the majors, he's primarily thrown the cutter over the four-seamer. I mean, the velocity is in the high 80s. It's just like a supercharged slider, right? Fastball sitting 94 or so in relief. I like Dylan Dodd being up as the third lefty. I was talking to somebody on Twitter this morning, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, right? I really do think that the plan for Dodd is going to be he's up for this weekend, and he may not go back down next week when they've got to bring Elder up. To me, this is probably a situation where Dodd could go down, Rafael Montero could be on his way out, or Daysabel Hernandez could potentially get optioned down. The thing for Daysabel is, I think I wrote about this a little bit maybe a couple weeks ago, and I didn't go into enough detail on this perspective of it, but he's gotten pretty lucky on his actual ERA versus the expected, right? He's walked a ton of guys. He's not getting a ton of chase. He's really not getting a lot of chase at all. And so he's having to come in the zone a lot more. Thank you, Joe. It was you on X. Thank you for that. His expected ERA right now is 3.59. His actual is like 2.31. He's been playing way over his head. And the last couple outings, we've seen where those walks really kind of hurt him, right? We've seen where those walks have been an issue for Daysabel Hernandez. Even hit by a pitch, right? And so plenty of things to like, but we know the Braves don't like to give up on depth. And so, yes, Aaron Bummer, I'm not Aaron Bummer. Aaron Bummer's not going anywhere, guys. Like, as much as we hate to say that, Aaron Bummer's not going anywhere. They like him. He gets the ground balls. He gets sometimes let down by the defense, but he gets the ground balls. They like him for that role. They're not getting rid of him. We've kind of asked around about that, and we've been told like they're not getting rid of him. But they could DFA Rafael Montero, or they could option Daysabel Hernandez. I think there's a possibility. We have a couple more outings like this. They could option down Daysabel. Now, does Dylan Dodd keep that job? Do they finally bring back Craig Kimbrell, bring him up? I don't know. There's a question in here from Doug earlier in the show. What's the deal with Kimbrell? Does he get the full $2 million if he's called up, or a prorated amount of a $2 million contract? I'm trying to remember the structure of his specific deal, but I actually think it was either him or Verdugo. I think it was Verdugo that got the same salary no matter what. Kimbrell was signed on a minor league deal. He only gets the $2 million if he's up in the majors. So he's the exception there. Verdugo was getting that $1 million no matter where he was. Kimbrell's in the minors on a minor league deal, but there's a different salary if he's selected to the majors. So there you go. That's something there that I don't know what they're going to do with Kimbrell. His velocity is better now. He's done some back-to-backs in AAA, but it's still the lowest fastball velocity of his career, right? And what I'm worried about is if they bring him back up. Sorry, I didn't realize my phone wasn't muted there. Sorry. If they bring him back up, I'm worried that Snit's going to use him like the old Craig Kimbrell. And I don't think he's that guy right now. And this is the issue with the Braves bullpen. We brought in a ton of dudes because we had to replace Joe Jimenez and AJ Minter, and we had to replace Grant Holmes. I mean, if you think about that, Grant Holmes was pitching multiple innings out of the pen. He was pitching, he was taking high leverage innings. He was pitching multiple innings as a bridge guy before they moved him into the rotation. You had to replace 3 relievers. And so far, most of the guys you signed have not worked out. And I think right now we're seeing Iggy is struggling, and the guys behind him that we normally would trust to handle this, right? Your Dylan Lee, your Daysabel. These guys are Pierce Johnson, right? Giving up the home run to Schwarber, just the absolute nuke job yesterday. These guys are a little bit more unreliable than usual right now because they're having to take higher leverage innings than really is ideal. And the big issue with the pen was you went with a quantity over quality method this offseason, trying to sign a bunch of dudes and hoping to get one of them to work out. And so far, none of them have really worked out. Enyel De Los Santos has pitched well in lower leverage situations. He's been pretty good when the game's not on the line, but he's also stumbled a little bit in higher leverage situations. Okay, in just a second, let's talk about Chris Sale. I have a question for you guys about if we think Chris Sale could be a Hall of Famer or not. We'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Special live edition. There's a couple people who've joined during the thing. They're like, oh, this is live. Yes, this is live. Shout out Zazabar. We're doing this on, I think we're going to start doing this on Fridays. This is pretty fun. There's a lot of y'all here. Thank you, everybody, for hopping into YouTube. Again, if you have questions, I'm monitoring the chat while I talk, and I'm trying to star these so I can come back to them when I get to a break in the action. So if you have questions, drop them in here. Chris Sale is threw his 2,500th strikeout last night. And he is the fastest pitcher in MLB history to 2,500 strikeouts. He did it in 2,026 innings. The previous record was Randy Johnson, who did it, I think, in like 2,107 or something like that. So Sale is the 40th pitcher in baseball history to do it, the 38th pitcher in modern history. But what a lot of people don't realize is Chris Sale, his baseball hero growing up, he has always said was Randy Johnson. So to beat Randy Johnson's record, he had a lot of great comments last night about how it was a great thing. He really can't focus on on getting too deep into it because they're in a battle in the season right now. He knows what the job is, and it's to go out and have another start the next time. But it's a really cool kind of achievement, and he's happy about it. And I had this question. I was hosting MLB Game Night last night on the Locked On Podcast Network. We recap every single game at the end of the day. I've seen a couple of y'all from Braves Today in the live chat on that show as well, and thank you for that. Is Chris Sale a Hall of Famer? I think he is. I've seen a couple people in here. I think Mike Smith here said yes. 3 yeses. Yes. Sale's a Hall of Famer. Joe asked if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's not going to get the 3,000 strikeouts, I don't think. He had 225 last year. So he would need 3 more seasons. He'd have to pitch till he was close to 40. And I mean, he might do it. I don't know. He might do that. He has to stay healthy. But it just feels like 3,000 still going to be a little bit tough for Sale to reach. And that's kind of been the magic mark. If you get 3,000 strikeouts, you're a Hall of Famer. Sale's going to be an interesting case because he's probably not going to get there. He might get there, but he's probably not going to get there. Shout out Mets Bullies. Interesting name, by the way. Also saying yes, Chris Sale's a Hall of Famer. I do think he's a Hall of Famer as well. Yes. The question that Joe asked, first ballot, I don't know. So here's what we have for Chris Sale. Here's the career resume, right? He's an 8-time All-Star. He won the Triple Crown last year, won his first career Cy Young last year. He won the 2018 World Series. He won a Gold Glove last year. He has the one Cy Young. He has another second place finish. He has a third place finish, 2 fourth place finishes, 2 fifth place finishes, and a 6th place finish. And if he continues at the pace he's on now, and you'll remember he had a 6.63 ERA after his first 4 starts. And then shout out to Justin Toscano of the AJC, dropped a great piece about the work that Spencer Schwellenbach and Grant Holmes did to help fix Sale. Since that start on the 13th in Tampa, where he didn't make it 5 innings, since then, he has a 1.66 ERA over the next 8 starts. He's 3-1. The team went 5-3 in that stretch. If he continues this pace, he's going to have a Cy Young finish, if maybe not another win this year, right? Mackenzie Gore of the Washington Nationals leads all of baseball in strikeouts. He's looked fantastic. But I do think Chris Sale is going to have another finish. If he gets, let's say he gets 2,900 strikeouts, and he has all of these Cy Young finishes, he's won a World Series, he's won the Cy Young, I would argue, yes, Chris Sale's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I do think it's kind of the exception to be a first ballot Hall of Famer without hitting that 3,000 strikeouts. But this is also something where his peak, his dominance was so good for so long. Early in his career, like we always talk about the peaks for these guys. And that's my argument for Dale Murphy, by the way. He didn't have the longevity, but he had the peak, right? From 2010 to 2018, Chris Sale put up a 2.89 ERA with 1,789 strikeouts and produced 42 WAR in what a 9-year sample. That is absurd. That peak is right there with anybody else in the modern era for one of the most dominant pitchers of all time. So yes, I think Chris Sale's a Hall of Famer. You guys all pretty much seem to agree. We're a little bit biased here. Obviously, we're all Braves fans. But it does feel like, yes, he's a Hall of Famer. Even if he were to retire after this season, I think he's a Hall of Famer. The question here is he a first ballot? And Mike had a great comment here. We only got him because Boston didn't think he could stay healthy. It's not that Boston didn't think he could stay healthy. He didn't stay healthy in Boston. I mean, he won the World Series in 2018. I think it was 2018. Yeah. Was an all-star there, 2.11 ERA, and then struggled, got hurt in 2019 after having a 4 and change. Didn't pitch in 2020 because of injury. And then 21 through 23 combined for 150 innings across 3 seasons. His ERA was just under 4. So, like, it's not that they didn't think he could stay healthy. He didn't stay healthy, and they pulled the plug too soon. And not only did Atlanta get him last season, and he had what I'm going to argue is the best season of his career, but Atlanta got it and did not have to pay Chris Sale. Boston gave them enough money after we redid his contract and added a year on to cover his entire salary last season for Vaughn Grissom, and that was it. Like, people say it was Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom was a terrible trade. It wasn't Sale for Grissom. It was Sale and his entire salary in 2024 for Vaughn Grissom. So I just love how that kind of worked out. Really interesting kind of just how that happened to me. I think it's hilarious. Okay. Speaking of Boston, let me know your expectations for the weekend, because I want to talk about this Boston series, and then I'm going to get to your guys' questions. If you have questions, drop in the chat. I start a couple of them, but we'll kind of come back to some of those in just a second. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, special live show here on Friday. Again, really kind of enjoying how this works. Couple questions real quick before we get into the Boston stuff. The first one from Michael Cox, and this is from the very beginning of the show. I tried to start and come back to it here. In your opinion, what are the odds of being a seller at the trade deadline, and who might they trade? This is a really good one. You have to look at the odds that they're going to do stuff, right? I'm going to pull up a sports book. I'm not going to name the sports book because they're not paying me for that, right? If you're watching this and you work at a sports book and you want us to use your stuff, shoot me an email, contact@bravestoday.com, but no free pup, guys, right? The odds in the NL East as of this morning, minus 145 for the Phillies, plus 130 for the Mets, plus 850 for the Braves. If Atlanta had been swept yesterday, I would have said the division is done. It's gone. Like there's no shot. I still don't think they have a shot of winning the division. I am unfortunately not. That opinion is not shared by John Smoltz. I talked to somebody who interviewed him just the other day. We were talking via DMs for about a week. We were discussing that, and then he interviewed Smoltz and sent me the article afterwards. Smoltz thinks that when this team is healthy, they are a playoff team and could potentially still win the division. The issue here is we're all comparing everything to 2021. And 2021 is skewing our view of what the Braves offense really is. I think he's kind of correct there, right? As far as we're all still comparing this offense to 2021, so we're not happy with what the offense has done. But I don't think in a vacuum any of us would be happy with with this offense now. Like, we're not. There are guys. Ozzy's been on a hot streak recently, right? Austin Riley had signs of life yesterday, but I really just don't think that this is a division-winning team. And so you look at what are the wild card odds, right? If you go, and again, on this unnamed sportsbook, Atlanta's odds to make the playoffs, yes, minus 104, no, minus 118. They are the favorite to get the 6th seed in the National League, the final wild card spot, plus 500. The Padres are at plus 550, so are the Giants. Diamondbacks plus 600. Cardinals plus 750, which is wild to me because if you look at the standings, Atlanta is behind, I think, all of those teams in the standings right now, the National League wildcard standings. In it, Mets, Padres, Cardinals. After that, Giants, Brewers, Reds, Diamondbacks, then Braves. Silver Devin has a comment in here. I think we all looked at 2023 and wonder what happened to that offense. The joke here is that they were hacking PitchCom. You know, everybody made the jokes about them hacking PitchCom, and I always would laugh about the jokes and be like, there's no way. I mean, nobody would do that. There's a small part of me that wonders, wait, did they have something with PitchCom? Like, did a small part of me, seeing how amazing that year was and how they've not been able to replicate it now for 2 seasons and looked like different hitters at the plate. A small part of me wonders, were they hacking PitchCom? And if they were, can they go back to hacking PitchCom? I still think this team can be a postseason team. To the comments of a couple people in here, I think Georgia fan said we should take 2 or 3. Somebody else said we need to sweep them here. I think Mike said we need to win all 3. I do think that we can make the postseason. But if they continue to slide, I mean, Atlanta is 3-7 in their last 10 games. You have a couple more weeks like that, and you're not in it at the deadline. There are a couple obvious candidates to get moved this at the deadline. I think the number one guy in demand would be Marcell Ozuna. $16 million salary for this season. He's completely a free agent next year. So Ozuna is probably the number one guy. Raisel Iglesias. Oh, sorry, before I do Raisel, the issue with Ozuna is so many guys have talked to us, and by us I mean the media, about how Marcel's helped them, right? Pulling them aside and saying something, giving them a hitting tip, a pep talk. And like, it's not just the Latin American players, right? Michael Harris has said this. Chris Sale has said this. Chris Sale talked about when he was in the midst of that tough start this year, Ozuna came to him and kind of pulled him to the side and talked to him a little bit and how it really helped. So I'm really in that tough situation of, I don't know if they're going to re-sign him or not, but if they're out of it, he absolutely is a guy to move on from, simply because it's an expiring deal. And again, if you're not going to be a postseason team this year, get something for him. I don't think you'd get a lot, but you could get something for him. Raisel Iglesias, that all depends on what he looks like down the stretch. I do think somebody would take him. The question would be, what kind of return would you get for him? As Pierce Johnson right now, I'm sorry, Pierce Johnson. We're keeping Pierce Johnson. He has a club option for next year for $7 million. Raisel Iglesias, as of right now, you would get something, but it would mostly just be salary relief, right? You wouldn't actually get anything of value for Raisel Iglesias. Last year's Raisel Iglesias, you would get an actual prospect that you could keep for multiple years and do something with. So the question on that would be how he does between now and then. I don't think a lot of the position players, like Ozzie Albies has 2 club option years. He's not going to go. People want to move Jurickson Profar. You are not going to get anything for Jurickson Profar. At best, you could attach an asset or eat some of the contract to move the rest of it. But I really don't think you're going to get anything of value for Jurickson Profar. If he comes back and he looks like last year's Jurickson Profar for a month, maybe you could get something for him. But even then, it's probably just going to be at best out from under the salary. That is an underwater contract, whether we like it or not. Jared Kelenic, same thing. We're not going to get anything for Jared Kelenic. Speaking of, he was not the guy that was brought up. I realized I'd never got to who Jose Azocar is. He is a speed and defense guy. Like, he's been DFA'd multiple times now, but he can play all 3 positions really well. In his career, including the minors, he has I think it's over 9,000 career innings at professional innings in center field. I'm sorry, no, 6,000. He has 6,000 career innings in center field. The last time he got regular run in center was in 2020, I think it's 2022 with the Padres. He was plus 5 outs above average. He's one of the faster base runners on the team now, 28.9 feet per second. It's like 90th percentile. So his role was going to be defense and pinch running. Okay. He's not going to do much more than that. But Jared Kelenic's not going to give you anything for an asset in a trade. His batting average in AAA isn't spectacular. I've been told some things about, him coming late to the ballpark or wanting to skip team events and things like that just aren't great. I honestly don't expect them to tender him a contract in the offseason, and he'll go to free agency. So we'll kind of see what happens there. And outside of that, there's not really a lot of trade candidates on this roster unless you just want to dump a guy for sake of dumping a guy, right? Because so many of these guys have multiple years of control. Your only expiring deals, Ozuna, Iglesias, Montero, which you won't get a legitimate prospect or anything for. He does have money attached to him. So the financial value of getting rid of him isn't that high. I don't think he's on the roster by trade deadline anyway. And Alex Verdugo, maybe somebody takes Alex Verdugo off your hands to be a warm body in left field, but he's not incredibly valuable either. So the trade deadline, there's not a lot of selling you would do. There is some questions in here about what to do next season. I do think that the argument to bring him back is, 1, he's been a great guy in the clubhouse, and 2, he's been such a valuable hitter. The argument to not bring him back is what we've seen recently with Baldwin and Murphy. When they're both hot, one of them has to sit. You just legitimately cannot play Marcell Ozuna in the outfield. And AA's talked to us about this before, and he said it's not like the speed. We've played slowed guys out there before. AA didn't say that part, but it's the arm. When he was playing the outfield in like 22, I remember, I can't think of who it was, the Cardinals maybe? There was a fly ball that was not even halfway out in left field. Maybe it was the Mets. I think it was the Mets. It was like Brandon Nimmo or Jeff McNeil or somebody tagged up and scored from third on a fly ball to shallow left field that Ozuna bounced like 3 times to get to the plate. He just does not have the arm. And so AA has said you give up a lot defensively, guys going first to third, guys scoring from first, things like that, because he just has no arm to speak of. And with Nick Allen at shortstop in place of Orlando Arcia, even if you were to get somebody out there for a cutoff and a relay, it's not that. It's like you don't have a strong arm to make up for that. So the speed's terrible. The arm is terrible. He can track the fly balls okay. He's not great at it. Remember that play in St. Louis where he climbed the wall and then dropped back to the ground because he just way overran the play. There's no upside to it. So if you don't re-sign him, it gives you more flexibility, I think, to DH Acuna from time to time if you want to. If you have another outfielder you can trust. Use whichever catcher is not starting as the DH if you want to. I can see it similar to the Contreras-Darno timeshare, where Contreras was the DH 75% of the time and started 25% of the time, and Darno got the rest of the starts. For the record on that, by the way, part of the reason that deal was made and Contreras was traded away, his defense was terrible with Atlanta. And the Brewers have catcher devil magic. They've always been really good at getting catchers to be better defensively. Thanks for the compliment, Michael. I appreciate it. But also, there were specific Braves pitchers who refused to throw to William Contreras. They just they did not want him to catch their starts. And I've never gotten official names as to who it was. I've been told there were multiple relievers that didn't want to throw to him. Don't really have a lot of options there, right? If they need you, they need you. But I've also been told at least one starter did not want to throw to William Contreras. I don't know who it was. If you go back and look at that season, he did not catch a single one of Max Fried's starts. I don't know if Max Fried's the one who said that, but we all know that the defense was not good when he was here, and I've been told that guys didn't want to throw to him, and Max Fried did not throw to him that entire year. So that could possibly have been it. I don't know. Okay, so a couple questions here in the chat real quick. From Joe, I'm gonna put it on the screen and I'll read it here for everybody on audio. When are we going to talk about what most teams do when they underachieve like we have? They get a new voice. I don't want a new skipper, but at some point something has to change. I don't expect Atlanta, barring a complete collapse, to get rid of Brian Snitker in season. But this is not inside information. This is all speculation. I am pretty confident that one way or the other, this is the final season for Brian Snitker in Atlanta. He'll probably stay with the organization. This is his 49th year with the organization. And so they may give him some sort of special advisor to the GM kind of role or whatever next year so he can hit 50 years in the organization. But his contract to be the manager is up after this year. And AA had told us in the offseason, I can't think of which media availability it was, maybe it was one of those off-the-record things, that they had not done a new contract with Snit yet, but if Snit wanted to come back, he would be back and they'd give him a new deal. I'm starting to think that probably has changed. We've seen enough struggles. We've seen enough awkward moments with Snit where I just get the feeling this is the last year for Snit. Williams said, I think Snit's done after this year and he's going to retire. He's talked about being proud of the fact that he's been with the Braves his entire career. I think he's going to stick around and get that 50. I just don't think he sticks around in an on-field role or as the manager. I think he sticks around as special advisor, something like that, gets 1 year done, then retires. So interesting question there. Larry had a trade rumor, Anthony Volpe for Ozzie Albies. I'll admit I had not seen this. It's a little, I know that the Yankees are going to move Jazz back to third base so they can get a second baseman. I don't know where this came from. And I don't remember necessarily, I haven't seen it. It feels odd that the Yankees would want to give up on Anthony Volpe simply because a lot of their other options are not ready for the majors, right? They traded away a couple guys. Oswald Peraza has been scuffling. Oswaldo Cabrera is hurt. And it feels like they're probably still a year away from being able to replace Volpe. I wouldn't mind Anthony Volpe. He's struggling this year, right? He's still +4 run value offensively. He's got 6 home runs, 7 stolen bases. Not amazing. He chases very little. He does have contact issues. He swings and misses in the zone a lot. He does strike out too much, but he also walks plenty. From a pure baseball perspective, Anthony Volpe for Ozzie Albies. The Braves should make that trade 7 days a week and Sunday after church. From a clubhouse perspective, the idea of trading away Ozzie Albies is really tough. It really is hard to think about the longest tenured Atlanta Brave being moved. So again, you should want to do that if you're the Braves. I really don't know if that's something that you should do from a fan base perspective. But I totally would not mind getting a shortstop. And I do think that is a priority. Nick Allen's been great this year. His defense is awesome. He's going to win a Gold Glove at this rate. But I do think he needs to the Braves need to prioritize getting a shortstop. They have a couple guys in the low minors. Luis Gil's international free agent I'm high on, but you don't have enough time to wait for that. I asked you guys about the Red Sox series. I never got to that. I think you need to go 2-1 this weekend. They're scuffling just like you are. They're 27-31. We're 26-29. Moises points out Ozzie's not going anywhere on a trade. I ultimately think that's true. I don't think Ozzie's going anywhere on a trade. He's here until now. Whether or not they re-sign him after his second club option year is up, that's a different conversation. But I don't necessarily think he's going anywhere via trade. I don't. Whether or not they re-sign him in 2 seasons from now, when his second club option year is up, is a good question. But he's not going anywhere via trade before then. That's not the way Braves like to do things. For the series this weekend, Lucas Giolito versus Grant Holmes tonight. That's an Apple TV game, which sucks. A lot of us don't have Apple TV. I'm lucky to have it, but just know if you do have it, you don't have to listen to their terrible announcers. You have an audio option to listen to the Atlanta Braves radio network. So shout out Ben Ingram and those guys for doing that. Saturday, 4:10, Walker Buehler versus Spencer Schwellenbach. Walker Buehler is not the same guy that he was before the second Tommy John. He got thrown out of his last game for arguing balls and strikes, which was actually kind of funny. I like Atlanta's pitching matchups in the first 2 games. Game 3, Garrett Crochet versus Spencer Strider. This is probably the only game where we don't have the pitching advantage, simply because Garrett Crochet has been so good. If Strider was fully healthy, you'd have the advantage, but it'd be really close. You don't have the advantage on Sunday. It's a 135 game, by the way. But I think Atlanta needs to go 2-1 in this series. And if they don't go 2-1, you then have, you're even farther in a hole if you don't win this series. And we need to probably revisit that. What are the actual expectations? Can you win a wild card? Things like that. To Mike's point, Strider is making progress. He gave up 2 hits in that Phillies game and lost 1 run. It was a double. No, 2 hits, 1 hit. Either way. Just kind of something there where you hate to see that. Terrible luck. But he is getting better, and I do think he's going to continue to get better. And if you make the postseason, I think he'll be a lot closer to the Strider that you know by then. Sir Kistling in the chat has a question. Any updates on Lopez? We have not gotten updates on Ronaldo Lopez. Typically, the way the Braves do this is they just they keep it quiet. They let the guy rehab. And then when they get close to being ready for a rehab assignment, we will typically get to hear from that player if they want to talk to the media. So usually they come in, they do their work during the day. They don't do their work at nighttime. They do their work during the day. Sometimes they stay for the game. Sometimes they don't. A lot of that depends on whatever's injured structurally. Is it anything that can be aggravated if they trip and fall in the dugout or something like that, right? If somebody jumping up and down during a walk-off and hits them in the arm, can it hurt them? So I don't necessarily think he's at the point where they want him in the dugout. So he does a lot of his work during the day and goes home. But we probably will hear from him right before they're ready to put him on a rehab assignment. And every now and then, if the media asks, we might get an update, but usually they just don't have anything for us. Other injuries, Nacho Alvarez, literally nothing. I can't even find out if Nacho Alvarez's wrist injury is like a ligament tear or a broken bone. Like, no clue. Cannot find out what it is. I've asked a bunch of people, and I don't think there's anything nefarious here. He's a prospect. They typically don't like to talk about this stuff. Prospect injuries, they really don't like to discuss. I remember breaking news a couple years ago, Blake Burkhalter's Tommy John. And I got it from Blake Burkhalter's side. and I confirmed it through somebody else. We wrote the article for Sports Illustrated. I put it up. And only then, when the news was out, would Snit or anybody else actually confirm the news publicly. He specifically had to be asked. There's a report out there that Blake Burkhalter had torn UCL, going to have Tommy John surgery. And that's when they said yes, because they just don't talk about prospect injuries. Frustrating. Usually the big ones break. We find out when a guy has Tommy John, things like that, but they don't love to just get it out there and volunteer it. Mike, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. You had a lot of great questions today. Final question from Joe Reese before we get out of here. Could the Braves trade for Michael Soroka if they keep having starter injuries? Buddy, I've been asking for Michael Soroka to be back. I wanted them to sign him in the offseason. I do think if the Nationals fall out of it and the Braves don't, he's going to be one of the guys on the move. I would love for that to happen. I don't know how willing the Nationals would be to move him in the division, but I would not be opposed to that at all. This has been a fantastic live edition of Braves Today. Sorry for those of you who were on a lunch break. This was almost an hour, but thank you for being here. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we go live next Friday. We'll be back. I'm going to try to do a lot more shorts over the weekend and be able to do shorts a little more often, so stay tuned for those. Dropping news on interesting roster moves or things like that. So stay tuned. But again, thank you to everybody who was here. Y'all have been fantastic. I really enjoyed this. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.